Benjamin Castle are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald! Around the body. Jazz up!
He's off from inside the centre square. Boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal from inside the centre. Fuck! I can't believe it.
Good time of day. Welcome once again to Americans Watching the Footy. This is episode 228, and we are previewing round one, our first all round. I love that Andrew Dillon and the league are still trying to push this stupid opening round stuff. I don't know if you saw
So again, I knew it was going to stick till at least 2027 because of the 150th anniversary of the MCG day-night test that's going to happen, but I hope it's abandoned soon after. I think it's going to take a complete shakeup in the powers that be for that to happen, though. They're trying to make this big Northern States event happen, and they get good crowds for it at least, but it goes alongside this whole schedule imbalance, and if you're trying to make it a big deal about opening the season, then why not actually, spread the games out like a full round? Make it a point to have home games in each state, but you don't have to have both the northern teams home, do you?
It didn't even sell out at GWS as far as I know. It looked like it was 19,000-ish instead of, but it holds what, 23 something, 25, I don't know.
The relocate to Canberra crowd is having a field day with that. Canberra Team 20 is the answer, but the league's probably going to be stupid and say like Southwest.
How long now has Richmond and Carlton been like the designated opening game? How long has this been going on?
Good question. It looks like they've been meeting in round one at the very least every year since 2007.
Because if they wanted to ditch that, I'm just like, let's call it round one. If you wanted to make the whole first round of games like outside of Melbourne, you could do that. Yeah, you can take advantage of Tasmania, you could have a game in Ballarat or something. But let's have just, my whole thing is, first off, let's open the season with round one. And second, let's have the whole round, a full 9 games.
Now, though, we're going to have some cases where multiple teams play 2 games before some open their season as a whole. It's 2008, by the way, that was the first time that Richmond and Carlton was the first game.
Was there a set game before that, or?
It tended to be a Saints away game for a few years, but there wasn't anything consistent. There was a break for a bit because it had been Richmond and Collingwood.
I mean, I like just the idea of, the reigning premiers get to open at home with the first game, kind of like the NFL does.
Have that be the Thursday or the Friday, and yeah, you can have the other be a Big Four matchup if it's not a Big Four team that won the flag.
I think just my gripe at this point is that it's not a full round. I'm going to feel that way whether or not Richmond and Carlton get the opener. And like right now, obviously, I'm less like, oh, it has to be Richmond Carlton, knowing how lopsided this is probably going to be, which there's your transition.
Man, these teams are a look for Richmond. It's a new look, and it's going to be a painful one to start. They still have some premiership players in the team with the likes of Nathan Broad, Nick Vostone, Jaden Short,
Owen and Curvis, Tom Lynch.
Oh, fuck, Tom Lynch is playing. That's like my genuine reaction, by the way, to actually seeing him in this team. But also you got 3 guys making their debuts for the Tigers in Sam Lawler, pick 1, Luke Traynor, pick 21, and Harry Armstrong, pick 23.
Harry! I don't trust like that.
This looks honestly pretty dire outside the core group in the back. Also, Morris Rioli not getting into the team?
That threw me off for sure.
The player that I'm honestly most interested in here is not one of the debuting guys for Richmond. It's Jack Ross, because I thought he was in for a big 2024 before he had some major injuries that kept him out for most of the year. I'm not sure if he's going to be the bellwether type, when many are unsure if this Tigers team will even win a single game, but he's one that I thought could be within that sort of next guy up tier.
I think they'll win a game at some point.
Why is it against the Eagles?
Doesn't have to be. I just want to know, could they win a game against someone outside of West Coast, North, and we'll see who else kind of joins them towards the bottom.
Where did they face the Crows this year?
They did beat them last year. Remember, their wins last year were against the Crows and Swans. Maybe they just have a thing for beating birds.
That's why I'm scared as an Eagles fan.
Let's see. Crows, they play round 16 at the G, and that's it.
Yeah, that's not a double up. Well, circle that one, especially after Mark Bickley was one of the guys who said that Richmond won't win a game. The Blues, they won't have Charlie Curnow, or somebody who scored 4 goals in the most recent meeting between these sides.
Orazio Fantasia.
And they'll also be without Elijah Hollis because he's taking some personal leave.
The immediate assumption there is it's another drug-related thing, which
He had, I think, a 3-year deal on the table before he was busted for coke, and that was reduced to 1. So that is the first thought. Thankfully, there are plenty of resources if players actually go and seek help. Hey, is that a hint there, Caden Cleary? The Blues will have 3 new faces in as well, Ethan.
yes, Lucas Camporeal, the biggest name there. It'll be his debut. He was picked number 54. It's funny because, like, he and his brother had torn up, some of the U18 stuff and the, state level competitions. And then, their stock wasn't that high in the draft. Now, all of a sudden, he had a great preseason, and here he is.
A couple of years ago, 2023, Ben was the best on ground for the Futures game, the grand final curtain raiser.
And it's funny to me that, their stock had plummeted so much, and now all of a sudden, oh yeah, here we go again.
It's Lucas who's going to get the chance on the wing. Other new faces after 211 games in orange, Nick Haynes will be in right away. We'll see what kind of role he's lined up for. I expect the back and have being a long kick out of there. And also, the tank gets in. Third clubber Francis Evans. I would expect either he or Cooper Lord will be the sub. And I think part of this move to get him in is probably because of Hollins' absence.
Yeah, I mean, how many Hollins and Curnow and who else are these guys missing that would be the part of, a best 22?
Well, Nick Newman, of course.
But Newman's done for the year, so let's forget him and just say how many, guys that could be healthy. Not that you're ever going to get everyone healthy at once.
Well, yeah, last year's look, I think it's otherwise a pretty complete look for them. Plus, they've got Jack Silvani back.
That is something that I think we should all be happy about.
Even if you don't like the Blues, the fact that Jack is back in, just persevering through his multiple major injuries, plus just the tradition of the Silvani family there, yeah, I'm happy to see that as well. I think the only other one that might be in the best group that you'd be missing then would be Mark Pittenet, and I believe that Pittenet is not in the best 23 for Carlton.
We'll have the Pittenet and Tom DeConing debate throughout this year, I'm sure.
Well, Pittenet is injured right now, so that's why he's not going to be in there, but come in a month or so, we'll have that talk for sure. Blues favored by, holy 50.5, Batman.
I mean, I actually have them winning this by more than that. I put the number at 81.
I put the number at 46 initially. I'm not sure if I'm going to move that at all between now and then. It's more surprised that Rioli's out than any other things for the Richmond list. I'm just wondering how long the backs are going to hold up, because they are going to be put under fire. And as much as we love Nick Vlostone, there's going to be a lot more stress put on Jacob Blight, Ben Miller, who you might take a bit to tell apart because they both got different numbers. Ben Miller's now wearing 12, while Blight has taken Miller's old 46. Sadly, that means there is no number 51 in the AFL right now.
For someone to have a 51, usually that requires a bunch of injuries, to get a mid-season pick or something, so.
And Blight was one of those.
Yeah.
The Thursday game, that's going to be tonight after we're uploading this. It's going to be 7:30 p.m. local in Melbourne, 4:30 a.m. Eastern, 1:30 Pacific for American audiences on Fox Soccer Plus and or Watch AFL. The next night, just 10 minutes later, So 4:40 a.m. Eastern, 1:40 Pacific on Fox Sports 2. You want to have a more competitive and perhaps more highly attended game as Hawthorn and Essendon will play. This has become another round one tradition, and it's gone Essendon's way lately. They've won 4 straight head-to-head and 6 of 7 going back to 2019. Last year's meeting was an inaccurate day for Hawthorn, where they won on X score yet lost by 24 because they kicked 11-17.
I missed that version of Hawthorn.
And remember, this was Hawthorn missing like that without the Wizard. Is the Whistler going to be there?
I bet he will. I think, though, it's going to be too big a crowd for him to really get a lot of camera time.
The guy that I remember from that meeting last year was Mac Guelphy, who we at that time called the showerhead, but he had a defensive forward job against James Sicily. But because it's Mac Guelphy, he did his hamstring and won't be seen for another couple months.
I have this weird feeling. I kind of like this matchup for Essendon.
Why so?
I think their midfield can match up. That's the biggest thing. You know, the combo of Merrick and Caldwell, I think, can line up with Hawthorn's best in there. Simply, you know, actually having some decent health for once. You can...
How does Zach Reed get in?
I don't know. And I think Kako leads the young forward group. And I like start of the year Essendon, you know. Start of the year, you get to see more of how they look on paper. And I wouldn't be surprised if Essendon, you know, is once again a team that starts the year well and then fades. And even if this prediction goes horribly wrong, it can't be the worst prediction I've made. Because remember last year I said Freo and Adelaide, I was really looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun game, and then it was terrible.
And also, literally this year, you were saying that you expect to see Ye at the Footy because Bianca's Australian.
Yeah, so I can always make worse predictions.
Ethan mentioned that Isaac Kako, or as we hope to push the agenda on him, Iraqi Gryan, will be making his debut. We were not the first ones to make the comparison, and it's not just because of his hair. Like, there was legitimate talk on draft night that there were some Gryan Myers comparisons, especially because Gryan was a high-scoring forward in his under-18s. I think he scored 7 goals to win best on ground in a Talon League Grand Final, which the Falcons only won because Joe Lombardi missed a shot from right in front after the siren. But neither of those guys are playing this game. Kako's going to be debuting, and Jackson Pryor, after 39 games for Brisbane over the past 5 years, will be suiting up in the red and black for the first time, joining his father Michael among the historic Essendon ranks.
You know, I don't think Pryor's special, but he gives them more size in the back that they need.
Yeah, never doubted his running ability either, and he was one of their cleaner players in the second half against Geelong in the Community Series.
I'm still of the belief that by the end of the year, Lewis Hayes is going to be a big impact piece in that defense. But for now, there's certainly an opportunity there for Pryor. I think he could get picked on in this game, though.
Pryor could be picked on, and with Laverde still out with his hip, that's why I was talking about Reed along with Ridley. Like, on paper, it's a good group. Just please, Zach Reed, stay healthy. Fuck. The other player that I would say is missing from the best 23 for Essendon, and who knows if there's even debate about that, is Peter Wright, because he did his ankle in a VFL practice match. So we won't see him for at least a month.
I mean, his stock is way down.
I mean, it helps that Nate Caddy exists.
Actually, not long ago, went back and watched West Coast and Essendon from last year, because that was like one I had never gotten around to. And Caddy had his first couple goals in that game and has some pretty interesting ability and versatility beyond just, you know, take mark in forward 50 kick goal.
He can play a more open game. Guys like Harry Jones can play a more open game. Hopefully his butt's good enough to play. It's mentioned that it was a glute injury. That's why. Hopefully he doesn't have to go into the iron butt.
Oh, man. It itches.
Hawthorn, James Warple is out 3 to 4 weeks. My guess is that gets Josh Ward in, though there's been talk about Henry Hustwaite. I would love if Warple instead also took Easter Monday off. You know, do his childhood friend Gryan Myers a favor there. And then great news, Chankwath Jath is available after playing in the VFL. So maybe, you know, the nice thing with Hawthorn is because you had Sam Frost as the sub last week, you can shuffle pieces around. My guess is Ward gets in, but you can move guys around. Like Josh Weddle's got some versatility. He was pretty quiet last week. There's a lot of options. And I think when teams come out, we'll learn a good bit about just kind of their hierarchy and where they value guys with what their lineup looks like.
Could you see CJ being the sub?
Yes, but putting the guy who's always injured in the sub role doesn't seem to be a common thing. And I think that's especially tricky to do with, it's like, what if you bring him in and then he does his hamstring again? So, I mean, I guess he does have some versatility, even though you think of him as a defender. You could do some wing stuff with him. So I don't hate that idea. I just don't think it happens.
However, it's sliced. Hawthorn are favored by 20.5. And I would put this a bit closer. Early season Essendon. And as we've been talking things up, I don't know. This is a type of game where I could see the margin being closer, almost making up for what's going to happen on Thursday.
Yeah, I would have set this around like 12 or 13. Again, I could totally see Essendon winning. I think I'm tipping Essendon.
Sure, if I'm going that far. As we get into Saturday's games, Ethan, I know you're going to be enjoying this first one. Oh.
Yeah, if we could adjust for the heat by doing a little rescheduling here, that would be great. It's going to be the first time since, I don't even know when, that I'm not going to be like fully locked in on a Geelong game live. Maybe there was one in 2022 at some point. I'm not sure.
Wait, I'm not sure if you watched 2021 round 23 live.
No, I did not. I slept through that mercifully.
I think that's the one then.
No, I think there was something within the last couple of seasons that I didn't fully see live. I had to let's see. I know the last time I had like an actual work conflict that wasn't, like I napped and I missed the first 6 minutes and then was caught up by halftime. It was kind of like catching up from behind for the first quarter and a half of the qualifying final against Collingwood.
Did you see the end of that live then, or no?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so you knew that Max Holmes had given Geelong the lead while he didn't. The reason this is all coming up is because Ethan's going to be covering state championship basketball this weekend, and with Geelong bouncing at 7:20 p.m. Pacific time, he will be occupied for another, couple hours?
Yeah, the question becomes, do I try to stay off of everything, or do I, half follow along? That's the challenge that I'm going to have to figure out.
For Freo fans, this is going to be like what it's like to watch the Baltimore Ravens for us most of the time. A 10:20 a.m. bounce on Saturday morning for them. 1:20 p.m. at Geelong, where it will be hot. And Freo will look to win their third straight trip to Cardinia Park. Last time they were there in 2023, Caleb Sarong was excellent in contests. But last year's meeting was out west in round 22. And Patrick Dangerfield and Sean Manna came through in the fourth quarter. The Cats won an underrated game, honestly, to celebrate Jeremy Cameron's 250th.
But one of Jack Henry's best games. And he's going to need to be good in this one because Jed Buse is going to be out 8 to 12 weeks with finger surgery. And Jake Kolajachi is going to be out 3 weeks with a groin injury. I said groin. Let me say that again.
LeBroin James.
Funny, LeBron could actually be there Friday night. His kid's going to be playing.
Are the Lakers playing?
I don't know, but LeBron's out injured, so he can kind of do what he wants.
Well, either he'll be in Denver or in Sacramento watching Bryce and Sierra Canyon.
Yes, they will be playing against Lincoln of Stockton.
We also know Geelong will remain without Tanner Brune, his timeline unclear. Sean Manna will be playing in the twos after recovering from foot stress. Maybe Wes Welker could have helped him with that.
Rex Ryan.
But the big deal is Baz Laika. Just make sure you keep the Nike headband inside out, Bailey, all right?
It would be really funny if, instead of, someone trying to snatch Mason's goggles, anytime it gets a little testy, if someone tries to just, flip his headband inside out.
James Sicily, who swiped Aaron Dalton's headband that I'm thinking of.
Okay, there's a plot for Easter Monday.
The biggest acquisition for Fremantle this offseason will not be playing in Geelong because Shea Bolton is still recovering from his leg injury. So it's no Bolton and no Hayden Young for Freo. Nathan O'Driscoll could be the guy in the middle, though, with his strong inside play in the preseason. And Ethan, you would be all in favor, but it's against Geelong.
And no Sean Darcy, right?
No Sean Darcy, so who among Luke Jackson and Liam Reedy will actually lead in the ruck? Because that's going to determine a lot in terms of where those last spots might be filled. Out in Mandurah, it was Reedy again, with Jackson listed at full forward. So those are pretty strong indicators. unless Justin Longmire is being so devious and saying, nah, we're actually doing a decoy strategy the entire time. That's why we look like shit.
With the defensive outs for Geelong, every reason to think Connor O'Sullivan should be in there.
And that perhaps with Sam DeConing required more in the back, Reece Stanley could get a ruck lifeline.
That's my assumption. I would think Mark Blitzovs will get some of those duties as well. I think the most interesting thing for this game from the Geelong standpoint strategically is, what does Mark Blitzovs do? I mean, I assume you just line him up on Luke Jackson.
It sounds right.
The other question I have, I assuming he doesn't play, but like, could Mark O'Connor get in there just to tag Caleb Sarong? Just as long as somebody tags Caleb Sarong, maybe that's a Mitch Nevin or Tom Atkins job. Like, without Hayden Young, there's no reason to not tag Sarong.
Geelong enter as 13.5-point favorites. I want to see how this team is constructed before making any premature judgments, but the lack of both Young and Bolton makes me believe that Chris Scott will have an easier time doing the right thing and might not overthink things as much.
I feel oddly good about this. Maybe I shouldn't. I have this weird feeling this is not going to be a game that we struggle with as much as usual. Now, there are other matchups that I'm like apprehensive of as the year goes on. Like, I don't know if we're going to keep dominating Essendon. I'm always worried about GWS, and it's going to be right around Sir Doug Nicholls round when we usually suck. Like, that whole stretch of rounds 9 to 12 or so concerns me a bit, but I feel kind of good about this one. Maybe I shouldn't. I feel like after a quarter, you'll know right away, like, is this going to be, Freo thriving at Geelong, putting on the full court press, or are the Cats going to be fine? And as much as I love O'Driscoll, I'm not terrified of him because this team has good wing play.
No overlaps early Saturday. We do have one in the late window. We'll get to that after the break. But we have our first double up of the round in the double up everybody should expect, the grand final rematch.
I mean, has there ever been a time when the grand final wasn't a double up?
I'm not going to go deep into the archives to try and find that, but I would expect no. This one's interesting, though, because it's at the runner-up's home site.
Yeah, the Swans with back-to-back home games to start the year. This will get underway 10:15. I'm wondering, with the longer breaks in the Geelong game and the extra time before the final game of the night, I think this might end up getting pushed back by like 15 minutes or so.
For now, though, it's a 4:15 p.m. local start.
3:15 in Queensland. Oh yeah, this is the time of year when like Queensland time is behind South Australia time, right? 10:15 p.m. on the West Coast, 1:15 a.m. Saturday on the East Coast. This will be a Fox Soccer Plus game, and I probably won't have even watched this by the time we record Sunday night.
Unless it's a game of the quality that we got in round 19 last year, maybe.
Even that, I didn't get to watch that live because I think there were overlaps, or I know I ended up watching that one after the fact, though.
That was almost the Will Hayward game, but instead, Talashi had the game-winning goal as the Lions won by 2 over a shorthanded Swan side that was missing all of Justin McInerney, Callum Mills, and James Rowbottom. And then the grand final happened, and I feel like we've talked about that far too much already. But I'll just say again, Premiership player Darcy Ford.
Yeah, I get the feeling it will be Oscar McInerney back in for this, unless they decide to really load up with Talls, which just matchup-wise doesn't make sense.
And even if they do, I feel like it would be more likely to have Kai Gallup in, their academy guy had picked 42, or Sam Day, than to go with an actual second ruck in Darcy Ford.
I think Sam Day is just a quality AFL player. And at some point this year, I think he's going to get in not just as like a 1 to 2 game injury plug thing, but as like a long-term piece, because I think he's actually pretty good. I don't know if the situation lends itself to that happening right now, but it will happen eventually.
It might, with the need for a second ruck, because that was honestly part of Joe Danaher's utility.
I would expect Brisbane to win this game. I'm a little surprised that they're only favored by 3.5. Sydney's depth is really going to get tested. As I've said, Taylor Adams has fully secured his place on the Glass Bones Paper Skin team.
I was born with glass bones and paper skin.
He did his hamstring again. Maybe that means Caleb Mitchell gets in. Could mean Tom Hanley gets elevated from the sub role. Maybe Riley Bice gets his debut.
A mature ager from where else but Werribee.
My guess, Hayden McLean gets in. I was surprised that he wasn't in the round 1 team. Hey, according to
Hold up. He was nursing a groin injury. That's the only reason there.
Oh, okay. And I know I said round 1 when I meant opening round, but AFL Tables also thinks it's round 1. So
Go to our round 2 preview.
I feel even if the Swans lose this game, as long as they put up a decent showing, I'll feel good about them knowing what they're missing and how their depth is being tested. Similar to how I didn't feel terrible about them after opening round, other than like knowing that like my concerns about defensive depth were validated right away. Does Ben Patton get back in?
What's your next option at this point? Aaron Francis got concussed, so honestly, maybe I would take Patton out and try Joel Hamlin.
I'd probably do that too.
Who, funnily enough, played forward last year, couldn't get into any games, then made the Indigenous All-Stars team because Alex Pierce got hurt. And of course, Hamlin had been traded away from Freo. There's a sordid sort of comedy in that, but I would like for Hamlin to get the shot, even though I'm not sure if it's going to happen. And longer term, I see this as more of a stopgap solution until Callum Mills could be healthy.
I feel like the 3.5 line is a little low. How do you feel about that?
I think some home oval advantage was taken into account there. I mean, we also have yet to see the Lions this year because of the postponement. So this will be the first test of some sort for their new forward look. What does the solution end up being there? Is it actually Sam Day? Or is Logan Morris just going to take another stride with Macca's in tow? Because I can't see Hipwood changing his ways really at this point. If you're looking for somebody on the interior, I think your best bets are to see what Morris can do and maybe in a round or two test out Gallup.
Hipwood is actually one of the players I'm most interested in when it comes to watching the Lions this year. Is he going to be the one setting guys up from the outside? Is he going to be setting up shop in the middle, trying to take contested marks? I have no idea what he's going to look like and what his full role is going to be.
And I think the tall structure will depend exactly on that.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters. Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Freo fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed. It's so easy you can edit it while drunk. And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do. Best of all, it's completely free. Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
It's episode 228 of Americans Watching the Footy as we continue previewing round 1. I am Benjamin Castle at BenjaminHK01 on Twitter.
I'm Ethan Castle, Castle Media.
Castle has a K.
It happened to me again a couple weeks ago. I was on a list for something, and I said with a K, and people were looking under the C. That's why I keep saying with a K.
Brian Harambe is our executive producer. That's Ethan's cat. He is on Instagram at catnamedbrian. Is he with us right now?
Yes, he is. He's right here.
And we're on a variety of platforms at Americans Footy.
We are not on Quibi yet. I believe in the Quibi comeback, or as I call it, the Quumback.
I honestly forget what Quibi even was, not gonna lie.
It was something Meg Whitman put a lot of money into. Basically, it was like a thing for TV services and shows and stuff to release like 6 to 10 minute videos, except you could already do that on YouTube and stuff, and there was no way for customers to like communicate with one another and share things, and like there was no interaction between users.
Roku bought all their content for less than $100 million. Saturday night gives us our first overlap of the season, and it is a direct overlap. Both games beginning 7:35 p.m. Melbourne time. But that's 4:35 a.m. Eastern, 1:35 a.m. Pacific. We should note that's also 7:05 p.m. South Australian time, because one of those games is Collingwood and Port Adelaide under the lights at the G. Dan Houston will be back from his suspension. It was fixtured perfectly because, of course, it was for Collingwood's sake. And this game is not a double up.
Yeah, and that's a shame with the drama here.
The Battle of the Bars and all. Look, Port Adelaide has still yet to play North Melbourne in Victoria since they traded for Jason Horne-Francis.
Here he is again, the horny one.
Also isn't happening this year either.
Now, I understand that Collingwood, if you wanted to do double ups with everyone they had beef with, yeah, that wouldn't really work.
They would have to play, what, 32 games or something like that?
Yeah, they'd just have to play everybody twice.
Except maybe Gold Coast.
These teams also only met once last year. That's kind of hard to believe. A 42-point Collingwood win at the G back when things were looking a lot better for Collingwood. 4-goal game for Patrick Lipinski, who was very quiet this week. We're starting to wonder at this point, is he just an okay player? Because sometimes there are moments where it's like, oh my God, Patrick Lipinski, this is what he's capable of. And then a lot of the time he's just kind of I think in order for Collingwood to be a top 4 team, he's going to need to be a lot more, yeah?
Either that or Ed Allen succeeds him.
Now, I did like Ed Allen last week.
That's another reason why I mentioned that. Lipinski isn't often a super high touch player. He played 23 games last year, and in only 8 of them did he get 20 or more touches, and only got to 30 once, and that was in the closing round. So it's impact per touch that really has to matter for him. And no, it was not there this past week. But his role should be amplified, and perhaps you'll see Allen pushing forward a bit more as well, with Will Hoskin-Elliott out. Initially, it was called a tactical sub, but his knee is going to keep him out of this game. So should we officially change that on the sub tracker, Ethan?
I think you can.
I think so. And also it makes more sense then as to why Nick Dacos was not subbed out.
Or why like someone who was just playing really poorly didn't get subbed out.
A number of minutes before it was announced, felt like 10 before, I noticed, oh shit, that's Hoskin-Elliott on the bench. What the hell happened with him?
Yeah, I mean, before it was announced, they showed him like putting the shirt on.
At first I wondered, wait, is that Ned? No, that's not Ned Long. Okay. Collingwood waiting on availability for Josh Dacos and Jeremy Howe. It's not Jeremy's head. He was cleared despite the big collisions. Mason Cox is also available. And does Collingwood try to load up on size here?
I mean, this Port doesn't exactly overwhelm you with talls now.
And defensively, we know they're going to be without Zerk Thatcher. And we're not sure about Radagolea either. I would love to see Asava versus Mason as like a main matchup.
That was a thing a couple of years ago in a round 1 game.
Bring it back. I think the solution in the back for now for Port will be Jeremy Finlayson, because that's where he was in the preseason.
Where does that put Jack Lukosius?
This will be his club debut, of course. He could be joined by Joe Richards, although I would be more keen in getting Barry in right away. I want to see some more guys to be there with Mitch Georgiadis on the taller side. Back to defense. The pieces that were there last year, Logan Evans can move the ball no problem, but his defensive abilities will get a real test in this game. And filling the Dan Houston-sized hole against, well, Dan Houston, that seems like a Josh Sin assignment to me, because I hope Jace Burgoyne stays more flexible.
I mean, we've talked about Josh Sin having the ability to do that. Maybe it also opens up a little bit more for Ryan Burton.
Don't think in most teams at this point Burton would be a best 23 player, but with the lack of back 6 depth right now, I think he might still be. Yes, Collingwood played some poor stretches last week, but at the same time, I can't see the accuracy being as big a problem in this game, and it's going to be against a much easier back unit to play against than Taylor, Iden, and Himmelberg. For Port to win, in my book, would require Aliir to play up to a superhuman level.
I'm more concerned about just the midfield without Butters.
Less so because the horny one exists, and so does Willem Drew. It'll mean more attention on Drew, I would think, but I also think he's ready for that. And where does Sam Powell-Pepper factor into things? If he plays as I think he should, I'd like to see him kind of be that bruiser right there at the contest.
Yeah, what is his status? That's also an interesting kind of...
Hal Pepper is not listed on the injury report.
Wow. Awesome. There was always something missing from Port last year without him. So I look forward to the concept. I just look forward to watching him. Collingwood favored by 9.5. That seems fair, yeah.
I think it does. I might push it a couple points further in the Pies' favor, honestly. But that's more of a gut thing.
There are only really, having looked at all the lines, 2 of them that really stood out to me as way off from where they should be.
Is the other Saturday night game one?
No.
So you're in agreement with the Bulldogs being favored by more than 3 goals despite the pieces they're missing against North?
I think this line is actually right about where it should be. No Marcus Bontempelli for 5 to 6 weeks, and then we'll see about Bailey Dale, Ed Richards, Riley West,
Cody Waitman and Adam Treloar on the bend right now as well. Along with Liam Jones, so Rory Lobb game on right away in the back.
I like Rory Lobb versus Nick Larkey. That just seems fun. I will say this. I'm more intrigued by this matchup because of some of the outs, and I would be in normal circumstances, though I am definitely disappointed that George Wardlaw is once again out. I don't think he's entering glass bone paper skin territory, but right now I just think the expectation should never be to get more than 18 games out of George Wardlaw, if even that.
He could be on the team by the end of the year.
I hope not, because he's fun.
The juice in this matchup, part of it comes from Caleb Daniel switching sides after 192 games and a premiership medal. He's one of the 3 new adults in the room for North, along with Jack Darling and Luke Parker, all expected to play, along with a confirmed debut for pick number 2, Finn O'Sullivan. Where else might the chips fall? I'm going to hold out seeing whether or not Jacob Constanti gets a chance. I think there is potential for him to get that slot as a small forward.
I hope Caleb Daniel plays with a huge chip on his shoulder in this game after all of the opportunities that he wasn't given. I'd love to see Jack McRae do that when the time comes too.
We had wanted to be Bulldogs and Saints round 1, and I'll tell you why in the next segment. But the Bulldogs have won 7 straight head-to-head going back to 2020. That used to be the Good Friday matchup. Josh Bruce kicked 10 goals in one of those meetings. Last year, in round 23, Sam Darcy kicked 7-1 and beat North Melbourne single-handedly.
I mean, he could just be the forward solution to this game. I still think, even with all the outs, I trust the Bulldogs in having a lot of talent. There'll be some opportunities for a Latham Vandermeer, Harvey Gallagher.
Vandermeer's good to go, yeah. He did get concussed a couple weeks back, but yeah, Gallagher seems like a reasonable one. And he was listed at full forward in that Community Series game, as was Riley Garcia. I'm also hoping for a versatile start of things for Matt Kennedy, who honestly should also have a chip on his shoulder with how the Blues treated him on the way out. Rushed up after his kid was born to meet Carlton in Brisbane. He was not the reason for their struggles, and they subbed him out super early. Also, I feel like we're just going to be on most ex-Blues sides anyway. This will be the 24th straight meeting between these teams at Marvel, and the 25th will be in round 17.
This feels like a game that's a double up a lot of the time, yeah?
Yeah, the Marvel tenants doubling up seems pretty normal. Another Marvel tenant in the saves. I said I wanted them to play the Bulldogs. That's because Jack McRae's first game as a Saint is his 250th in the AFL. Instead, he will be playing that at Adelaide Oval. And if you don't have Watch AFL, sorry, Americans, this one is on a delay. So, yeah, get Watch AFL. It's 12:05 p.m. start Sunday afternoon at Adelaide, 12:35 p.m. for the Victorian and New South Wales and Tasmanian audiences. Oh, the ACT, of course. For Americans, 9:35 p.m. Eastern, 6:35 p.m. Pacific. That's, I think, the earliest start time that we're going to be getting this year, especially with the time change coming up. This can't be as bad as the last meeting, right?
Well, that was also just super rainy. I believe I watched that from Morro Bay.
Nice spot on the California coast.
It was a 32-point Crows win. It was very rainy. Matthias Filippo and Lockie Scholl stood out. Ross Lyons smashed his phone, and then the ultimate eye wash with Riley Thilthorpe getting sent to go run around after the game because I guess he didn't run enough during the game.
Didn't even do the song, apparently. I mean, this was his first game for the year after doing his meniscus, 2 goals after being in as the sub, and you say, fuck you, you're not singing?
Could have been handled so much better.
You know, these teams haven't met in Melbourne since their first meeting in 2019, and their only meeting since that has been outside South Australia was when Phil Thorpe had an overhead winner in Cairns.
Now that the Lions have gone to Optus, this could be one of the ones we focus on. I mean, there are others too, but this could be one of them.
It's one that does stand out a little bit on the Matrix, but not as many as others. Collingwood still hasn't played at Cardinia Park this century.
I mean, that's the Collingwood gets special treatment with that, so that's not even one that I'm gonna go on about. There's just no use.
You'd expect to see a South Australian debuting in the AFL for the Crows, that being Sid Draper with how well he's done in the preseason. And you expect to see a South Australian being among their club debutants as well, because Alex Neil-Bowen is exactly that. Remember, the Crows brought in 3 veterans over the trade period between him and 2 former Giants in Isaac Cumming and James Peatling. This is a group of a lot of good role players within a midfield. I just don't know if anyone can really be that lead guy. And as of now, I feel like that responsibility will naturally fall to Jake Saligo. Don't get me wrong, I like Saligo. I just don't see him as a leading guy.
Like, how does he do against a Jack Steele? The last couple of years, I think we've looked at Jack Steele as just kind of there.
I mean, at this point, he's already 29. He's a very established quantity, and you probably saw his peak in 2020 and 21.
This seems like the sort of game where maybe he could really go off for 30 plus and like not hide at all.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. This is a guy who still got 9 Brownlow votes last year. I mean, I guess it's the same question for the Saints. Who's going to be that lead guy in the midfield? I would love for it to be a jack-off combination between Steele and McRae.
I mean, I liked McRae a lot, and this is the most confident I've been in a Saints midfield in a good minute.
In the Saints in general is wondering what their tall setup's going to be like up forward. In the back, even though they lost Josh Battle, it should open up opportunities for guys like Ari Schoenmaker. But up front, it's not as clear to me because they're not just missing one guy there. They're missing their 3 best tall forwards from last year.
Yeah, Tim Membry's gone, Cooper Sharman's hurt, and Max King has a knee injury.
And no Matthias Filippo either for most of the for like the first third of the season.
Yeah, the 2 really long-term injuries for these guys are Dougal Howard for 7 to 9 weeks and Matthias Filippo for 7 to 9.
It's disappointing to me also because Filippo is a South Australian native. I would have hoped for him to have a chance to go off in Adelaide again.
He's also just a super fun player to watch.
And one who responded really well to a lengthy stint in the VFL. That's the kind of story that we all should get behind. So here's to a good recovery for him. In the meantime, the Crows are favored by 18.5. I'll just say, hey, congrats on your extension, Ross.
The more I think about it, the more I think this game could go the Saints' way. So maybe I would take this line down closer to 2 goals.
I want for Josh Rochelle to kick a goal and just have this beaming smile.
I'd like for him to just be able to have like a less dramatic stretch. A lot of which wasn't his fault. A lot of that was the way the team handled it, not the way he handled things.
We will have Rochelle and Rankin and Keys all in there, so pieces that we like for Adelaide. Just can it be more than just pieces?
I'm very interested in this game in just a lot could go. I have no expectations for this game. I think that's the best way to put it. Sometimes when I say I have no expectations, that's a negative thing. That's not in this case. I have no clue what's going to happen.
And to those of you who are screaming at me, Benjamin, what about Jordan Dawson? I didn't forget about him. He's just not a straight ahead leader in the midfield or the center square. You can see him bouncing off of that, but in terms of like lowering the head.
Yeah, he's not exactly going to go out and get a bunch of contested possessions. He's very good at stretching the field from kind of like that defensive half mid spot. That's his strength. Not a put your head down and get the ball off the ground. Here's the other game whose line I really, really disagree with. Melbourne hosting GWS at the G. You know, there's jokes about NG Stadium being empty stadium, but this one's going to be empty. Not only is it a Melbourne home game, not only is it probably going to be pretty warm, not only is it against GWS, it's up against Formula One, which, you know, I've said many times, doesn't really do it for me, but Australians seem to fucking love it.
Formula One did it for me a bit more last year once Verstappen's dominance ended. Yes, he still won the championship, but there was a lot more juice in each individual race.
The actual racing isn't that exciting to me. You know, if you're into like the technical stuff, cool, but like, when does anyone pass anyone? Also, the whole thing is just too European.
I mean, wheel racing, I get a kick out of IndyCar, especially with the variety of courses there.
Just like, you know, the fan culture behind it all feels very European.
I think the other thing is that the teams are so clearly stratified because each team does all their manufacturing in-house, and there can be such an advantage for some like Red Bull over others, whereas things are much more even in terms of parts and things like that in IndyCar. But while a lot of people are going to be focusing on Albert Park, at least a few people and the odd American here and there will be focusing on the G at 3:20 p.m. Eastern Australian time, 12:20 a.m. Eastern Sunday morning, 9:20 p.m. Pacific Saturday night. For Americans, hey, this is on FS2.
If my hotel has FS2, I'll maybe get to see the end of this. I mean, we'll see if I end up doing anything after the last game Saturday night. Probably just go back to the hotel, but if people want to do something, I'm not going to be like curmudgeon. So these teams are meeting once this year. It feels weird having all these round one matchups that are one-offs.
Back in the early days of the league, when you had 17 or 18 games, it would just be the reverse fixtures of the first few rounds that were your double up. So in that context, it's even weirder.
These teams played at Alice Springs in 2023. It was rainy. Nobody could get there. GWS won by 2. GWS also won by 2 last year, despite giving up a 35-8 first quarter. Big games from Brent Daniels and Jesse Hogan, and then Joe Fonte was the unused sub. It's so weird to have an unused sub in a 2-point game. Whenever you think of unused sub games, you think of it being, you know, like a 5 to 6 goal game or something, right?
Confused as well, but it worked. Teams that had unused subs in 2024 were 5-0. The Giants, we know, will be without Kieran Briggs. He is concussed. Expect Lockie Keefe and Max Grzewski to remain as those ruck options. We'll see what the status is for Tom Green as well. He was out for opening round, but it didn't end up mattering because Finn fucking Callahan. Whenever Green comes back, I just hope it doesn't marginalize Callahan.
You know, normally when you lose a player of Tom Green's caliber, and I say this despite saying, you know, that his role last year, I think, was exaggerated a lot. You know, you expect, all right, we're going to have to make things up by committee. Everyone's going to have to just be, you know, like 5 to 10% better. And Finn Callahan just said, like, no, I'm going to do his job and mine. It's fine. Jesse Hogan and Jake Stringer both still a week away, and Aaron Cadman was not very good last week. So if there's hope for Melbourne, it lies in that. Plus, you know, Christian Petrarca countering the entire GWS midfield.
Petrarca, Oliver, Viney trio should be intact. Unfortunate that they'll be without Judd McVie to start the year, though. This is a player that I've really enjoyed watching, just his gradual rise. I think the extra piece there that might really help, especially if you're trying to stretch the field, would be Caleb Windsor, who missed the end of last year with a hamstring. That definitely had a negative effect on Melbourne as a whole. And potential for a good number of debuts for them as well. If you're looking tall, could we have Matt Jefferson finally, or Aiden Johnson, a mature age recruit? And then when do the new additions come in? Langford and Sharp, among others. You said you didn't agree with the Giants being favored by only 2.5.
Yeah, just look at what they did this past week. I know they're still missing some guys, but even if they hadn't looked that good, I just like them a lot more on paper. Yes, Melbourne, I think, does have some similarities in terms of roster composition. Both have quality defenses, both have like a real midfield core, but like, guys, GWS is just objectively a lot better, right? Am I missing something here?
If you are, we'll probably just play that soundbite back and laugh at it for the round recap.
I might put like actual money on this game.
Round 1 ends with a coast clash, as it should. Stick the Eagles in that Sunday late slot where they belong.
Please tell me this is going to be a Wayne Russell game so we can get a lot of the West Coast and the Gold Coast.
We'll see who's doing this game alongside Paps.
Oh shit, that's right. I guess we Papali a game, but this matchup gives off a lot of Dwayne Russell energy, yeah?
Well, Paps and Russell do team up. I don't think it's out of the question. And I think you need Jared Healy as well for even more The home team in this matchup has won 14 of 17 meetings, and it held true for both last year. The Suns had a 6-1 third quarter at home in round 7 and won by 47. That was Hydrogen Bomb Jared Witz against Coughing Baby Bailey J. Williams in the ruck.
And I think Harley Reid was rested that game.
That sounds right. Then in round 21, Liam Duggan was the late game hero because as goes Duggan, so often go the Eagles. Jake Waterman had 4 goals, and we saw a glimpse of the future with Ruben Jinby at halfback.
Oh yeah, time zones. 12:10 a.m. Sunday for us, 3:10 a.m. for the East Coast, 3:10 p.m. locally, 5:10 p.m. in Queensland, 6:10 p.m. in Melbourne. Is that right?
5 for 5.
So it's Sunday for pretty much everyone, unless you're in like Hawaii.
Or Alaska. No Bo Allen, no Rhett Bazo for the Eagles to start the season. Allen would have played, but lost upwards of 10 pounds from an illness recently. Hopefully Liam Ryan can play. I would love to see both him and Tyler Brockman firing as small forwards. I know Ryan had a lot of a say in Brockman's decision to be an Eagle in particular. We know that Liam Baker and Jack Graham will make their club debuts. They have both been injury prone. I just want to see them get through things cleanly this year and start establishing themselves and being the adults that the Eagles need them to be. And then obviously you're going to have the Allen and Waterman duo there on the tall side, but I feel so uncertain still about the ruck situation. Whether it's Jack Williams or Archer Reed, I want somebody to pleasantly surprise me. And I just want to see more pace than we saw a lot of the time under Simpson and just do things that are a bit more reminiscent of what Baker and Graham were used to, honestly. Because it felt like Dimma's style was often very much opposed to what the Eagles did. So it's fascinating to me that their first game on their new team will be against Coach Hardwick.
Yeah, there's a fun little subplot, like without even thinking of that. I'm very interested in this matchup because it's another one where like no outcome would surprise me. I think this is one of those Sundays where the first and last game interests me a lot more than the middle game in a lot of respects. Because like if GWS wins comfortably, I'll make money, but I won't be surprised. Whereas the Adelaide game and this one, like I could see a lot of different things happen.
3 former Tigers will be playing for new teams in this game because there's also going to be Dan Rioli. As significant as he is, though, the outs for Gold Coast feel more important to me. No Mac Andrew.
No Mac Andrew makes me sad. No Sam Flanders just makes me wonder who's going to kind of like soak up those touches that he normally gets.
If you're looking at stuff from halfback, I mean, that's where Rioli is. But if you're figuring out a new midfield rotation, then I'm less sure there.
Yeah, that's exactly why I'm not sure either.
It feels right for Gold Coast to have the plan B Flanders in the middle. So in that respect, looking at what they did their last time out, their center line included Sam Closey and Connor Butterick last time out. Now, Closey's more of an outside runner, but maybe he's part of the solution there.
I can't hear Connor Butterick's name said by anyone except Dwayne Russell. So again, this is just like the most Dwayne Russell matchup. Maybe instead he ends up on, like Adelaide St. Kilda or even like Dogs and North.
The Coast Clash does feel like it needs Dwayne Russell and Jared Healy in the younger group for the Suns in terms of who's going to make up those touches. Along with the names that we mentioned, Jake Rogers has gotten some half-forward time. What could Will Graham do just as physical as he is? And which ways does Noah Anderson, now the sole captain, end up stretching the field? I would honestly want Will Graham to be my focus for this game if I were a third party.
How does West Coast counter that physicality?
Damn good question. because there's going to be no Elliot Yeo. However, Elijah Hewitt is not on the injury report, so maybe he's a big part of that.
Like outside of obviously Harley Reid, it's just like who's going to body up to, Rowell, Graham, etc.
It's a really, really big opportunity for Hewitt.
Suns' 10.5-point favorite seems fair, yeah?
It does. Look at the lines from the preseason game. Jack Hutchinson strikes me as more of a wing, but was listed as being right in the center. I hope Duggan isn't one to shy away from contact, because especially with no Yo there, Duggan will clearly be the leader in name and also in attitude, I think. Ethan, who was your main character pick for round number 1?
Isaiah Wanganeen-Millera, just going off of a game that could be really interesting, combined with some rumors swirling surrounding him and, other teams trying to poach him away. I think that's the most interesting one.
He is a South Australian, having played for Glenelg, and his cousin is still a Crow, right? Wayne? That's another Glassbones paper skin guy, Wayne Millera.
Who's your main character pick?
I don't want to go obvious, but my thought was Caleb Daniel.
Fine, you can have him, and you also need to claim someone less obvious.
Okay, so my Little Monkey Man 8th dimension pick then. Let's go from a different game entirely and say that Nick Martin will actually have his best round 1 performance yet, because I'm not acknowledging his garbage time rising star nod a couple years back.
Any chance of a round 1 draw?
Richmond and Carlton did it just a couple years ago. I think it would be incredibly funny if, honestly, any of these games ended up as a draw, because draws are straight up funny. Crows Saints strikes me as one where teams are going to match each other's pace no matter what.
It's never the one you most expect, though.
See, the one I most expected was Melbourne GWS, just because of the closeness of their recent meetings. But watch for the Crows and Saints. I'm not saying it's going to be a draw, but I'm saying that these are teams who can, if they really want to, keep up with faster paced opponents.
Do you have any other, oddly specific predictions?
I'm not going to do that crazy Mike Blowers, Matt Tuiasosopo prediction.
Anything oddly specific, on or off the oval?
I want to see, one of the reasons why I picked Caleb Daniel is that I want to see Caleb Daniel just totally get into a bigger target and just light him up and actually have that be a momentum thing in his team's favor. I want to see Daniel, get into Sam Darcy, for example.
All right, with that, I guess, end card time, closing things, yeah?
I'm nearly falling asleep in my chair here, so let's get out of here. He's at Castle Media. I'm at BenjaminHK01.
Brian Harambe's on Instagram, a cat named Brian. We are on Twitter at Americans Footy. And remember, any pill can be a suppository if you believe in yourself.